So we're going to have a look today at rounding to the nearest unit and rounding to different numbers of decimal places. If you're not really sure about rounding to whole numbers, you should maybe watch our video about rounding to different whole numbers like tens, hundreds, thousands, if you watch that first. And it might also be a good idea to watch our place value video for decimals. Okay, so you can just remember that. Now in the last video on rounding, we showed you two methods for rounding and they're kind of the same. So one is when I think what two whole numbers is it between and which one is it closer to. So let's do that for the first one. So my first question is I want to round this to the nearest whole number and I've got 3.6. Now that's between 3 and 4, okay? And 3.5, that's the halfway mark, and this is bigger. So it's going to round to 4, it's closer to 4, okay? My other method was to look at cutting off the number at the whole number position, okay? So the units column, okay? So this has got an 8 in the units column for part B, and I'm going to cut it off there, okay? So I look at the number after, and if that is small, if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, I'm going to round down to the whole number below this. And if it's big, if it's 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, I'm going to round up to the whole number above this. Okay, so it's 3, that's small. So I'm going to round down to the whole number below this. 58.328, now that's 58, okay? Let's try this again for this one, okay? So I'm cutting off after the units column, that's my whole numbers there, and I've got 1,399.503. Now I only look at that very first digit after. You'll remember from our decimals place value video that the 5 is much bigger than, like the tenths column, that is much bigger than the hundredths column, and that's much bigger than the next one, the thousandths column. So it's only really the tenths column that counts towards whether it rounds or not, okay? So I'm looking here and it's a 5, that's one of our bigger numbers, so I'm going to round up. So from 1,399 up to 1,400, just adding on 1 unit really to that whole number part there, okay? Rounding to 1 decimal place is exactly the same, so we'll try using both methods again. So 0.33 is between 0.3, oops, lost my decimal place there, and 0.4, okay. 0.35 would be the halfway mark. This is smaller, so it's closer to 0.3, okay. So that's going to be my right answer, 0.3. Okay, or I can use my cutting off method. And here I'm rounding to 1 decimal place, so that's the tenths column, is 1 decimal place. Okay, so here I've got 12.984. Now the number just after that's an 8. Okay, so that's big, so it's going to round up from 12.9 to 13.0. Kind of a trick for that is, that kind of looks like 129. 1 unit up from 129 would be 130, but I've got to keep that decimal place in the right point. Okay, excuse me. Okay, now you might be thinking to yourself 13.0 is the exact same as 13, but that doesn't have 1 decimal place, and it's asked me in the question to round to 1 decimal place. So that would actually be wrong. I need to have that 0.0 there. That lets me know that my answer is more accurate. Okay, 13.0 is a more accurate way to write it than just 13. Okay. For my next one, let's do the cutting off method again. So I've got 755.4, okay, and after that 4 is a 5. That's one of my bigger numbers, so it's going to round up to 755.5. Okay, that 4 turning into a 5. Okay, now we're going to skip to rounding to 3 decimal places. If you can round to 3 decimal places, you can round to 5 decimal places, 2 decimal places, you can round to any number of decimal places. Okay, I'm going to use the cutting off method for this one because I think it's a bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 to my 3rd decimal place. I look at the number after, I've kind of gone over it, but it was a 1. Okay, and 1's one of my smaller numbers, so it's just like I'm cutting this off 5.838. Okay, for this one I'm counting 1, 2, 3 decimal places cutting off. It's a 5, that's a big number. So I'm going to have 25 point, instead of 278, it's going to be 279. Okay, now this might be a bit baffling, but I think we'll work it out. So I've got 39.999, cutting it off after the third one there. 9's big, so this is going to round up one. And again, kind of using that method before, this kind of looks like 39,999. And if I added 1 unit to that, I'd have 40,000. Okay, but it's not 40,000, it's 40.000. Okay, so that's how we round to different numbers of decimal places.